right, a very warm welcome to yet again the Uganda Diaspora Show. My name is Lynn Komugisha, and thank you for joining us. We are here to unpack stories shaping our region, shaping our country, and exploring how they connect to Uganda's unfolding political, social, and economic future. Today, we will certainly dive into what is sending ripples across the East African region and beyond, and that is the passing of Kenya's longtime opposition leader, Raila Amolo Odinga, commonly known as Baba. For decades, Raila symbolized both the dream and the drama of democratic contestation in Africa, a political titan whose life bridged liberation struggles, constitutional reform, and multi-party transitions. But now, as Kenya and the region come to terms with his passing, many are, of course, asking questions, and so are we today. His death certainly leaves not only a leadership vacuum within Kenya's opposition ahead of the 2027 elections, but also deep questions about the future of opposition politics and the generational leadership across East Africa. Notable among the questions are: what does this moment mean for the balance of power in East Africa? What does it signal for Uganda's own political trajectory as we move toward the 2026 general elections? And today, joining me to dive deeper into this conversation and some more is Dr. Alfred Ochen, who's been away, but we're glad to have you. Very warm welcome. I hope you enjoy spring. Right. We have also Kharim Ntambi of the National Unity Platform. Thank you, Kharim, for being part of us. I see we have Honorable Simon Mulongo. Thank you for joining us. Of course, Francis Kamuhanda, much appreciated, and Dr. Kisambira Zubair. It's very wonderful having you here, gentlemen. And I want to quickly start off, and I want to start with Honorable Simon Mulongo. If you're set and if you're ready, let us begin with the legacy and regional reverberations. First of all, Raila Odinga was more than a politician. We all remember that he was more of a regional statesman. If you recall, or if you read what President Yoweri Museveni said in his message on his passing, we see that from his role in Kenya's constitutional reform movement to his efforts in mediating conflicts across the continent, he stood at the heart of East African politics for over 40 years. Now, the question to you, Honorable, is that how do you interpret Raila's passing in the broader East African political context? Does this mark the end of a political generation or the rise of a new and tested one?
Well, thank you very much. Good day to colleagues wherever you are. For us, it's an evening. We are past 3 here in Kampala. Yes, of course, the passing on of Raila, first of all, was abrupt, and we didn't expect that he would pass on because whereas he's aged at 80, people who are 80 are not necessarily too old. And he's the type I knew personally. We've met and had a lot of work together, a number of occasions. And he's quite a strong man. Every morning about 5 o'clock, he wakes up to exercise. By 6, he's on the road, and so on and so forth. And in Nairobi, he would go to places like Serena. That is actually his favorite hotel, where his gym is with the other few members who is best. And so that fateful day when he was exercising is when he had this challenge and he was rushed to India. So it was quite abrupt. Back to your question, I think, first of all, we need to look at him as a persona that can be described as combined in some layers. And to me, philosophically, he has a Weberian charisma. That is a personal authority that mobilized across class and country lines. You know, he's the type of person who really not only was able to be seen as a messianic icon among the Luo community in Nyanza, the Jaluos, but also he was cutting across the country of Kenya. That's one, which is actually rare because some people are very popular somewhere, but not somewhere else. And then secondly, he had this movement memory where he had the detention, and then he emerged in the second liberation with the 2020 constitution, and then he had this, in detention, he was incarcerated by Moi. After he returned from his studies in Eastern Europe, and he was a son of a very iconic leader again of independence liberation, Jaramogi Odinga. He was seen with suspicion because his activities in terms of youth movements and all this. So with the failed coup attempt of August 1st, 1982, he was suspected as among the people and he was so incarcerated, which was actually false, and was tortured badly. He was crushed, even his manhood and all this was beaten badly, and that became a consequence of some of the illness that could have claimed him. Then lastly, the third thing is he has this ethno-regional anchoring. The Luo community, not just of Nyanza, but also of Tanzania, the Luos of Uganda, and the Luos of South Sudan. And recently, some of you are following events. He hosted an occasion where the Luo people came together. And to us, as analysts, we look at him as somebody who is ethno-regionalist, and he cuts across. So definitely in terms of East Africa, he's the type of persona that was very influential and therefore an integrationist at that. He was integrating communities across the borders and therefore seeing the broader East African community as something that can anchor the entire peoples other than his own people. Madam, if you allow me to just go quickly to something like in terms of balance of power, because I'm in some situation here, and I hope colleagues like Alfred and Kharim and others, Jauhar and others will forgive me. And Francis, my friend Francis, that I may not hold quite tough talks, Francis, today. The issue of balance of power, yes, he has been an opposition fragmentation risk factor, because he has been coming in and chopping, dividing and assembling. It's like one who divides and assembles depending on how he wants the balance of power to be in Kenya. Because of the 3 or 4 major tribes in Kenya, which are fundamental, we have the Kikuyu, who are the biggest number. Then you have the Luyas, we have the Kalenjins, we have the Luos, and then at the lowest point are the Kambas. Now, depending on how you are able to bring more than one community, more than 2 communities together, you are likely to have an equation that enables you to win elections as a president of Kenya. And as such, he knew how to play around, to the extent that when his father, who was conservative in 1992, was coming in as if he wanted to reinstate the conservatism of the old single ethnic community centered campaign, he actually went against him and managed to realign with the other communities at the judgment of his father. And he said and quoted that he cursed him and said that you will always come close to, but you'll never have it. Just like Moses was, he came close to Canaan, but he would not actually go into Canaan. And if fate is what it was, then actually it came to pass. He even won elections, but he never managed to make it. And not once, and not twice, and not 3 times. And just like his dad, who gave way for Kenyatta, because at independence, the colonialists knew that Jaramogi was the person to lead the country. But he said, we cannot do this as long as our senior colleague is in prison in Kapenguria. That is in western Kenya. And indeed, that's what happened. And he gave way for Kenyatta. And Raila also gave way to Kibaki when they had an accident, a very fatal accident. Kibaki actually lost balance and never became very jubilant and very sharp again. And Raila endured his hospitalization and not take up leadership until Kibaki was out of hospital. It was such a replay, and people always talk about it. So yes, he's that kind of person. Like in the military, we say dismantling and assembling of a weapon for you to master it. He was able to dismantle and assemble various ethnic communities to be able to have some leverage of sorts. And I think finally, in terms of Uganda-Kenya relations, yes, well, there was some state-to-state vow or trade pragmatism. Remember, Ruto and Museveni deepened their ties in 2025 tariff and the NTB removals, multiple cooperation MOAs, and so on. This really made sure that Ruto, who was against Raila and who had had some other cooperation with Museveni earlier, maintained a kind of an anti-Raila from Museveni. But this did not start then. I remember in some past, at some stage, I can tell you this, I can reveal this, that when Kibaki was going towards the end of his reign, our services did advise President Museveni that the most likely candidate to come into power was Raila. And so we are dispatched to be engaging him. And I was one of the people who were dispatched to engage Raila, to prepare him to have a positive mind about Uganda. But something happened along the way. I don't know which group of our colleagues went to advise the president that Raila was allying with the Luos, and which Luo included LRA. And hell broke loose. It was a very sensitive thing to Uganda, and actually they broke apart. And I was put in a very difficult situation because we're the same people trying to sweet talk and bring him on board. And at the same time, things had happened at a superior level. And that ensued for some time. And if you remember, the riots in Nairobi that led to the burning of the rail line and all this, and approaching the rail line, and the president collectively called the Luos Raila Odinga, meaning these foolish Luos. And it was just kind of a build-up onto that. But I can say that by the time of his death, there's a lot of reconciliation, and the president were on talking terms with Raila, and you could see that he was occasionally coming to Uganda. And when it came to the bid for the AU chairperson seat, President Museveni did actually become the key campaigner for him. And so I think that the Kenya-Uganda relations had issues, some kind of potholes at the time, but then later on with Raila, now everything is okay. The issue of Migingo now was actually shelved, and so on and so forth. The track 2 channels were reopened and so on, and I could see now that, so finally to me, I see that Odinga's legacy exposes what, as Africans, in terms of political philosophy, would look at charisma. He was charismatic, and this which filled the institutional deficits. When he leaves, definitely his feeling of those deficits will be remaining empty. I don't know who can really step in the shoes of Raila to be able to fill this institutional deficit that he has created. The issue of legitimizing dissent, where he was using peaceful means. By the way, if he was a bad man, he would have gone after Moi. But he never became avenging. And I hope Francis, when he becomes somebody powerful, he will have to play that kind of politics. In other words, you can actually go after an opponent peacefully without being avenging. And then and pluralism, which is without choreographer. I don't know how pluralism in Kenya is going to be without somebody who is choreographic like Raila. Definitely, the politics in Kenya will never be the same again. He's the same one man who could rally the country, and it could rise against any sitting president, and the whole government would be shaken. So really, this is what I can say, since I cannot monopolize the space, madam. Thank you very much, colleagues. My visitors are here, and I just have to leave at that. We're at home, And so, but thank you very much. I have not heard from Alfred. I'm anxious to hear from him and others.
I'm
But
here. Thank you.
I'm going to be listening in. And if I'm
Sounds
able
good.
to come in at some stage, I will. Thank you, Madam Lynn. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you,
Comrade.
Simon. Honorable Simon. Thank you for
Oh,
making
Thank you,
right.
time.
sir.
All right. Thank you, Honorable Simon. Very wonderful intro into our conversation. But what comes to my mind is that yet Kenya politics have always mirrored broader East African realities. And these are from contested elections to coalition politics and citizen activism that is now starting to boil. And the question still remains, is there anybody ready to fill those shoes? Now, with Odinga's departure, does the East African community lose one of its last traditional bridge builders, someone who could speak to both the liberation generation and the Gen Z, the now called the digital generation? I come to you, Dr. Ochen, Alfred. It's been a minute, and it's good to see you once again. Let's look at regional dynamics. Raila Odinga was not just an opposition leader; he was also a symbol of region ambition. And I still go back to President Museveni's message on his passing. He hints on how he has engaged both the Raila Odinga and his late father, now both late, over the East African Federation. So he was once Kenya's candidate for the African Union Commission chairperson, which President Museveni supported heavily, reflecting a Kenyan increasingly assertive on continental affairs. So with Odinga gone, what might shift? What might shift in this regional influence? They had sort of created, they were starting to create a bromance. When I saw President rather Raila Odinga, President Ruto, and our President Museveni come together to have a conversation. It was very interesting to look at. Does this open new space for leaders like President Ruto, for our Uganda's seasoned diplomatic posture to reposition ourselves in the East African affairs?
Thank you very much, Lynn and fellow panelists. First and foremost, permit me to begin by conveying my sympathies to the family of Jaramogi Odinga and Kenyans at large and East Africans and Africans. Yeah, I must say that the demise of Honorable Dr. Raila Amolo Odinga is a huge loss, to East and Central Africa and Africa at large. Yeah, if those who know Raila, he has evolved from Raila from Tinga Tinka, from Jacom to Agwambo, from Agwambo to Baba. So this is the man. Okay, he's the engine of. He was the engine of Kenyan politics, and one thing is that I must say, was unique about the late Honorable Odinga was that he was a very gifted politician that was able to, make ends meet, even bridge gaps that were there among opponents. He never held grudges. If you see even the current crop of leaders in Kenya, almost everyone passed through the hands of Raila Amolo Odinga. From all the speakers of parliament, both the Senate and the National Assembly, were once with Raila. So they were once mentored and nurtured by Raila. Even Ruto himself, he was the Secretary General of ODM, a founding member, so he has a hand. Even Uhuru Kenyatta belonged to ODM. Even Kalonzo was in ODM. So when you talk of Raila Odinga is just more than Raila Odinga. That's why even you could see when he passed on, his body could not be viewed from parliament by the populace. It was taken back to, I think to Nyayo Stadium. It was lifted. because he's a movement. He's a unique guy who has the ability to, make ends meet and make reconciliation. As you stated, it was amazing to see that His Excellency General Kaguta Museveni and Dr. Ruto and the late engineer Raila Odinga converging in the same venue, shaking hands, dancing together and laughing together. It was unexpected, but that was Raila Odinga. He was able to even, make peace or influence politicians in Uganda. If you watch during the Duo Convention, the likes of Olaro Tunu were the chief guests in Kisumu. Even there were Luo politicians from Ethiopia, from Southern Sudan, from DRC Congo. Some came from Tanzania. So it was not just a local Kenyan national politician. It was more of an internationalist. So his departure is a big, big, big gap. And also, again, note this. In the history of Kenya, Raila Odinga is the only politician who disagreed with his party and resigned as a member of parliament and went back and got re-elected. Nobody else has done that yet in Kenya. That is Raila Odinga. And Raila Odinga is a gentleman who guys thought he was finished, but he was able to reshape, to reset himself. Many times you write him off, but he emerges back, powerful. He's the only politician in Kenya who has followers. Others have supporters. He has followers. When he could say, go left, go left. Go right, go right. So his departure is a big, big blow to the Kenyan, populace and political arena and to East Africa at large. Because I recall, even when there was a time when the Ugandan opposition was struggling to identify a single presidential candidate, he played a very, very, very key role. They were going to Nairobi. I remember Olaro Tunu, Besigye, Norbert Mao, they were all going to Nairobi to get his guidance and support so that the Uganda opposition could get one presidential candidate. Although it did not come to fruition, because that time I remember that Abama Babaze stood, even Besigye stood, so that kind of didn't work out. But he was a gentleman who could even extend hands to engage the civic and the political opposition of Uganda, even in Southern Sudan, even in DRC Congo. Is very close to the president of DRC Congo, Shekedi, and so on. It wasn't, and again, it's a good lesson to us all that, power is not everything. It's all about service. Raila wasn't a president, but there's no any leader in Kenya who holds the kind of clout that Raila has. If you compare and contrast when Kenyatta died, Moi died, Kibaki died, the kind of crowd, Okijana, the former VP, died. None. The emotions you can see for yourself. I was just watching even just a few minutes ago in Kisumu right now. It's unbelievable. So Raila's, politics and departure is a lesson to us all. I had opportunity to meet Raila on 3 occasions. The first time I met him was in Toronto. That was in 2007. When he came, that time, the community members, the local community in Toronto had organized a fundraising dinner for his campaign. So we went to support him and we fundraised for him there. And then again, I got a chance again in 2010. He came to Vancouver. Then the last time I went to interview him as part of my research project, about land conflicts and ethnicity. in Kenya. Yeah, so it was part of my people I interviewed. So I got a chance, and I got that contact through the Saya governor, James Orengo. Yes. So he's a very down-to-earth guy who was able to mingle with the downtrodden. He was able to mingle with the elites, able to mingle with those with power. And if you know his constituency, Langata is actually a very cosmopolitan kind of society setting, very multicultural, not just the Jaluos who are there. It's very multicultural. And it is unique that he didn't even go and stand in Kisumu or in Nyanza for 20 years. He was in Nairobi. So that tells that he's a national leader. So Raila will be remembered as a nationalist, as a Pan-Africanist. He's a father. He has mentored so many political sons and daughters, the governors, the senators, the MPs, and they all passed through his kind of hands. So that is Raila Amolo Odinga. So his departure, I think the shoe he has left is huge. I don't see any of his associates that will fit in that shoe. Even his own brother, Dr. Uburu Oginga, cannot fit in the shoe of Raila Odinga. He's acting now party leader of ODM. He will not fit in that shoes. And finally, I want to say that we should learn from Raila's politics. That is a very reasonable and consummate politician. This is a gentleman, as Simon stated, he won elections more than once. The one we know so well is in 2007. It was a clean victory. He had the majority members of parliament. The district councillors and mayors were all ODM. And he was even leading until the last minute, until Kibaki men brought some votes from Central and surpassed by 1,000 votes. And they had to go and swear Kibaki at night, even. So there were extremists like President Ruto. He was the chief campaign manager for Raila Odinga. He had actually suggested that Raila should have been sworn in. Okay? And that time, by the Kenyan Constitution, there were gaps whereby even a judge, a high court judge, would swear the president. Okay? That means, and they already got actually what a judge to swear Raila. But Raila declined, saying that if I'm sworn in, and again, the two kind of centers of power is not good for Kenya. He maintained that Kenya is bigger than him. So it's a good lesson to us all, people out there, even Ugandan politicians and others within the region, that they should know that sometimes comes a time whereby a country becomes bigger than yourself. You have to make sacrifices, So if Raila could even shake the hands of Moi and work together, and later moved away and then they destroyed Moi. He shook the hands of Kibaki even after defeating him. That is very, telling, that's a sense of humility. With Uhuru Kenyatta, too, they had a serious fight, but later he saved Uhuru from being censured by the Ruto guys. Again, also with Ruto, again, the Gen Zs were going to overrun, the setting, the system. But Raila feared that if at all there was collapse, in the system or in the governance of Kenya, that implies that the military would have taken over. So Raila, will be remembered as a nationalist, a Pan-Africanist, a selfless leader, a service leader, not just a transactional leader. Yeah, so thank you for now.
Thank you, Dr. Ochen, for that. I want to bring this back home. Uganda's 2026 general elections are already shaping up as a contest between, of course, experience, reform, and generation aspiration. There's that vibe that is going around. Now, when a regional icon like Raila exits the stage, does it inspire reflection among our own political class, or do we risk repeating the cycle of contested transitions? I come to you, Kharim, and I ask, what lessons should Uganda's opposition and ruling establishment draw from Raila's legacy, his resilience, coalition building, and sometimes controversial strategies?
Thank you so much, Lynn. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to send my thoughts and prayers to the family and my brothers and sisters in Kenya, and to acknowledge that the East Africa as a whole has lost a giant statesman, but most of all a diplomat. I think that's the best way I can remember Raila Odinga. I would first of all recall during the 2007 riots. I think it was my first time to go to Kenya after the riots, and the name Raila Odinga was everywhere. He was the person that was needed to do the reconciliation and the peace talks, and having conversations with the late UN General Assembly Secretary General Kofi Annan. He was the guy at the front line. So for me, I would really look at his record as a diplomat and what he managed to accomplish. I remember in 2000, was it 10, 11, when he had been appointed to go to Cote d'Ivoire to do the mediation after the disputed elections there. He has done a lot of great work in South Sudan between Riek Machar and Salva Kiir, and even in our neighborhood. He has been the person that when we needed a diplomat, he was the first and last person to think about. Who do we have? Where is Baba? So to us as Ugandans, we have lost someone that we have been seeking guidance from. I remember after the 2001 elections, we had several meetings with his camp. He met lots of victims of torture, people who had been tortured after the 2021 elections in Nairobi. And he has been one of the people that the National Unity Platform led to in terms of, guidance and consensus building as a statesman and as a diplomat. But what lessons do we as Ugandans learn from this? I think one, the love for the country. Yeah, he really loved his country. He's like, the love for Kenya outweighed everything. He would never compromise. He would never see himself above the nation, and that's something that we should take as a whole. That despite the differences, we all have to know that we shall not outlive Uganda or East Africa. So we should seek the best out of all the situations. So to me, I will. The doctor has said it all, but for me, I would really remember him as a very accomplished diplomat and a statesman of East Africa. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, Kharim. Francis, are you able to have you packed? But coming to you,
Yes.
Francis, this is a question that I suppose all opposition political parties across the East African community ought to answer. Does the Ugandan opposition, and I'm contextualizing it to Uganda, have a Raila-like figure and a unifier who can command cross-generational, cross-regional appeal?
Oh, thank you, Lynn, and the other fellow panelists. And before I come to your question, I would also first send my condolences to the Odinga family and also to say that we have lost a real Pan-Africanist, a son of Africa who it's very hard to replace because if you see the Odinga's legacy right from the father as the first vice president and even when the father would have disagreements and you would see how he sorts them out, like you see that he was the current Odinga was being nurtured and prepared indeed. But I would say that I remember him. To me, he's one of the social democrats that I have seen, that indeed they think about society, they think about the common person as compared to politicians that we have who are driven by their own personal egos. Because this is thin when you see his actions when he was the prime minister, even when he was running against Mike Kibaki. Notable when you see when he changed Kenya when he participated in the 2010 constitution review, and you would see the changes that he's suggesting, not for self-interest as how we have seen the constitution changes in Uganda, but you would see a person who is really thinking about Kenya in terms of today, tomorrow, and generations to come, as well as East Africa. Then we see him um, trying to do power sharing, believing that Kenya or Africa belongs to all of us, other than Uganda, where you find it is as if it is a business for somebody, and then the rest of us, we are commodities that they can trade. So I like him for that. Think of infrastructure development. You remember when he came into force, the Nairobi Express, how people were like, he was telling them this is what can help. Where the unattouchables in Kenya had built in areas that are not supposed to build in, had even on in road reserves. That's how you see unattouchables here building in reserves for the railway and so on and all that. But he came out as a person and said we need to have some order. You see a person who has had his country at heart. Then you find in 2017 when he was elected, and then he went to court. The elections were nullified, and it became it set a standard or an example across Africa. So these are kind of leaders that we need, but also as a representative in the I think African Union 2018 or 2023. You see the man, then his mediations in Ivory, in South Sudan, and elsewhere. So I had wanted even he would come and mediate also in Uganda, but unfortunately we have not seen that come to fruition. But then going back to your question, whether Uganda has people to that capacity in the opposition, we have so many. But the only challenge is the leadership that we have in Uganda, where whoever comes, not the intolerance that is in Uganda, not the ruling party or the ruling government to listen, to say that we also have ideas that we can bring on table to develop the country, but they look at the opposition as enemies who should be crushed. If I can use the words of Museveni, age group ya Chaguranyi ninja kujimaraho. You see such, like coming from a leader who is supposed to be a national icon. Now, let me come back to Simon, because Simon said that was insinuating that it's we who should learn from Raila Odinga, that because for us, if we are in power, we would become avenging. Generally, it is the NRM that is avenging. It is the NRM. If you go and list how many people have lost their lives under the NRM, how many people are in prison, just because of having a different ideology from NRM. It is NRM that should learn from Raila Odinga. But do I think that NRM can learn? with the likes of their leader Tova Kumeini, such a unfound and patriotic slogans. Now these slogans of protecting the gains, they are not protecting the gains, they are protecting the loot. And Simon should come and tell us how much for him he has also looted, if he participated anyway, and what he's protecting. Their slogan is not protecting the gains, is protecting the loot. But anyway, having said that, for me, I see even when Mulongo says Raila Odinga was good at dismantling and then reassembling, no. That man did not dismantle anything. But it is like how we try to build and be part of Uganda that we need, but the ruling government will come and dismantle, and then all that is attributed or heaped on to the opposition. But I think there is a lot that we can remember from this man who will not be replaced. Number one, he's patriotic, like as how most of the opposition politicians in Uganda are patriotic, are Pan-Africanists, not claiming like how the NRM they claim to be Pan-Africanists, but their actions are beyond. But I like the point that Simon talked about the anti-Raila Odinga relationship with Museveni, how it soured and so on. And he emphasized one thing, and that is something that Simon, I thank him to bring out. People going, Museveni trades on lies. And sometimes lies come to turn against them. I'm glad that Mulongo was able to know that people came to tell Museveni lies. And Museveni followed the lies and everything soured. It is the same lies. They are the same group of people that go and tell Museveni about the opposition. And then you can imagine, like recently I was looking at the president saying, oh, you see the opposition, they stole 2 point something million votes in Central. And now I know what I'm going to do. Recently they did the same in Kawempe. So those are lies. And not until we do away with that, but otherwise, back to the question you asked, the opposition in Uganda, we have the likes of Raila Odinga. If we can talk of the Besige, he's a Besige. The man measures to that, but why is he in prison? Just because of lies, because of baseless accusations, because of NRM being cowards. Look at the way how they are treating the Bobi Wine and the Mugisha Muntus when they go for rallies. Either they will stop them and so on. All that is intolerance. Because they know who these other upcoming leaders are and whom they can become in as far as shaping the politics of Uganda is concerned. But otherwise, we have a lot to learn from Raila Odinga and we shall miss him. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Francis, for that. We see that Raila Odinga's politics were guided by conviction, not convenience. He proved that opposition is not rebellion against the state. And this is something we lack and as a country, Uganda. It is service to the people and not rebellion. He was both adored and vilified, known to millions as Baba Agwambo, that all the panelists have hinted on, the mysterious one to others. He built bridges when others burned them, choosing negotiation over destruction, even when his own followers called him a sellout, if you remember. Recently, the Gen Zs were actually calling him out, calling him that he had betrayed them. So, Dr. Kisambira, as a governance and policy analyst expert, I want to ask, in Uganda's 2026 political context, are we going to see the same spirit of engagement, or are we already witnessing more polarization and less dialogue?
Well, thank you so much, Lynn and the panelists. Good morning and good afternoon, those of you who are around this region. I hope I can be heard very well. I don't know. Thank you. Well, condolences to the Kenyans, the East African region, and the world at large, and the Odinga's family for their loss. it's a big loss. And if I may start, the region has not lost just a person, but they have lost a book, because for everything that you've stated here about Raila Odinga is a lesson to learn for those of us who are still around for some time to serve our nations for the different purposes. So he was such a very good book to read from to determine what the future would look like. Those of us that maybe look forward to having a brighter future for our nations. I want to start from the point where you said some people thought he's a sellout, or the Gen Zs actually thought that he's a sellout. Yes, I want to, I don't know whether give him, a plus or a minus, but for me, one thing I knew from Odinga was that he was someone who fronted his own interests above everything else. He first looked at himself and what he believed in, what really moved him was beyond anything else. But to the important side of it is that most of the things that really moved him were not for selfish interests only. He would really make some moves that are not expected of him, but for the larger good. For example, when some Gen Zs named him Sellout, it's because he had accepted to work with the government in power for the better good, for some, advantages that would put Kenya into a better regional and global position, but also to push their national interests as a group of people who are in leadership. Sorry, I got interrupted a bit there. I was saying that he would push interests, yes, that were a bit selfish, but also that would seem selfish, but play out to the gallery to be for the general good. So that's where I give him a plus. Then also, the time I knew Odinga, I've not lived so many years to speak a lot of history about Odinga. I think the pre-current speakers have said it all about him. But I want to say the time I first heard about the name Odinga, I happened to have studied in a rural school, which was not so far away from the border of Busia. It is in Mayuge district. But it happened to have a number of international students from the region, and many of them were from Kenya. So at that time when the election between, I think it was between the ODM and I think Mwai Kibaki, if I'm not forgetting, that ended up with no clear result. If to even the Electoral Commission, I think it's called the IBEC of Kenya, was not really sure who exactly won the election. And now when it turned out to be violent post-elections, that's when the name Odinga kept on re-echoing in our heads. And even where we were staying, there was a big ethnic divide between the Luo Kenyans and the Kikuyus, to the extent that you would have unrest at least every evening after the prep studies. They were a bit, I don't know, notorious in one or the other. They would know where the main switches are, so they would switch off power and fight amongst themselves, but for the cause that is really back home. One thing I would remember is that after some time, when I think he thought through his processes and realized the fighting would not take us anywhere, that lesson still lives with me, where many of them as leaders of Kenya sat and said, please, this should stop and we should look at Kenya first. I mean, that thing has never left me. Even when he came back to contest in the subsequent elections, I would have a feeling that there's something that happened before is going to happen again. But at least he has stood his ground, not to let it happen again. And I really thank him for that, and, applaud him for that. Then the other thing is that, you see, okay, initially I hated him. I really hated Odinga when the fighting hit him. I was like, no, this guy could restrain the machete wielding guys and tell them, do not cut your own. But when this played out, I don't know how the hate turned into love. I don't want to sound like this guy who attended the National Prayer Breakfast, who was saying he began from hate to love for the president in 7. But I think it was the same for me with Odinga. I really first felt bad about it. But later on, I really felt so much love for him, learning that he really puts Kenya first. And for how does that really contribute to the future of regional politics and national politics, those countries who are in the region? Having lost that book, really, it's going to be less of a dialogue. I think so, because he has been such a beacon of hope to the opposition yearning voters in the different countries, not only Kenya, by the way, but in the East Africa at large. So his presence would have added some salt in the soup to make it really taste for those who are, not giving a chance to the opposition yearning voters. And his absence is going to leave a very big vacuum in the political space for both countries. All countries in the region, especially for Kenya and their opposition. One great still, their successor is actually successful. So as everyone is saying that Odinga has left big shoes, I think one of the tasks he had to accomplish before he left this world life was to mentor someone who would actually retain the command of the Kenyans who believe in the opposition, whether in coalition or as individual groups. But Kenya still needs someone who can command the opposition, either to push for social justice and changes that, advance public interests, or to call for calmness when unrest ensues. And I think he has been the man who can do that for Kenya. Now, for our 2026 general elections, I think, like I said, I keep saying we've lost a book, because if he was still around, you never know, it would have determined otherwise what would happen post-elections, because we are all going into this. But two things here: when the election time comes, we usually know what happens around here. Military everywhere, violence, which is not the case like before this time around. I'm happy for that. But I think we're just at the tip of an iceberg. We don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. But post-elections, if there was anything to happen, he was the guy to play a big role. So that reduces the chances of dialogue for us in our elections, and it causes more of uncertainty. But I believe in Islam we say, where God has put a man, he does not put one. There is always another better option that is coming up. And I really believe God will see us through maybe the coming times without such great men that stood their grounds when it came to patriotism and maybe spirits of nationalism. Thank you, Lynn.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Kisambira. I don't know. I was laughing because you're sounding futuristic. You're already looking ahead of us 2026. We have finished elections and you can already see what was meant to happen or might happen. I do not know. This could be a different time, but yes, indeed, I quite agree with you there. I come to you, Dr. Ochen, Alfred. We realize that despite his lifelong activism, Raila's later years were marked by uneasy alliances, particularly his 2023 pact with President William Ruto. We saw that his party members joined what Ruto called a broad-based government, a move many saw as co-option rather than cooperation. So, and this is where the young Kenyans, especially those behind the 2023 anti-tax protest, accused Raila of betrayal. He responded, "I only donated experts to help save the country." Is this where generational politics take over? Or do you see young Africans, or do you think young East Africans, rather, are looking at leaders like Raila, once symbols of resistance, a part of the old order? We're seeing a semblance of that back here in Kampala, where we're looking, there's a generational, remember that point where Ugandans were referring to a generational leader and all these things. Dr. Alfred.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lynn. Yeah, I actually appreciate that question you posed, because the intergenerational question is very important, and most times it also creates discomfort among different demographics, because you find that the youngsters, the youth, or the Gen Zs are oftenly, radical. They want things pretty fast. They want to see fast results. And as a result, and that's where a person like Raila has been blamed a lot by the Gen Zs in Kenya in the most recent pact between President Ruto and Raila Odinga. As Raila stated, he just donated a few ODM experts, to help to stabilize the government. As I hinted before, to the late Raila, Kenya was bigger than anything else. He maintained that he did that because he was scared that the way things were going, the military was going to, take over. And he never wanted that kind of a scenario where the military takes over because the executive had failed. We've seen in many countries around the world of Africa, like Sudan, where it was a good people-centered revolution, but it was overtaken, hijacked, and it's old history. You go to places like Syria in the past, there things were hijacked. Egypt, whereby first the civilians came on board, took over, and later again the military took over. Up to now, he's still a military guy in Egypt as the head of state. So Raila never wanted that kind of scenario to land in Kenya. So if you have a hindsight, look back at Raila's history. Raila has been a peacemaker. He believes in reconciliation and peace building. If you see a person like Arab Moi who imprisoned him, tortured his family, tortured the father, himself, they were all jailed, but he came out and later he made peace. And right now, the Odinga family and Raila Odinga are actually allies. Yeah, actual allies. Yeah, actual allies. So that is the importance. Then again, post Moi, you find also with Kibaki, as I hinted first, that in 2007, it was very clear that the ODM and Raila Odinga actually had won the elections. And the radicals like President Ruto wanted Raila to be sworn in, but Raila declined. Raila stated that Kenya was bigger than himself. That's how Kofi Annan and others came in to intervene, and they had the power sharing. And where again, even Raila supporters were disturbed by Raila. He was shortchanged by Kibaki. Why? He loved Kenya. With Uhuru Kenyatta, you find even the Supreme Court of Kenya nullified the elections, because it was not free and fair. It was not clear. But still, later on, Raila still made up with Ruto, with Uhuru Kenyatta. Then later, again, with also Ruto, whereby also the victory of Ruto was very narrow and also is being questioned, undoubted. But still, Raila didn't want to see more bloodshed and didn't want to divide the country. So many people who are extremists, radicals, would not appreciate that. But is a moderate. And again, that comes with age and experience. Even in Uganda, you see right now, you find that there's already even a clash of generation in many parties. My own friends in NUP and NUP, you can see, if the likes of Puga are being asked away, a guy like Senego Lubega is a personal friend. We were together in university, even in high school, is being sent away. These are skilled and exposed, smart, but because of the generational, tension, they cannot fit in that generation. The youngsters things differently, and they are being shown the way. You find even like NUP, the youngsters are taking charge. Certain generation are being pushed out. You go to FDC, it happened and it died. That's why you see FDC now is its own empty shell. Okay, so the intergenerational politics is taking roots in our country, Uganda, which is a good thing. I would encourage the young generation, the Gen Zs and the young leaders to be at the forefront. But it's very, very, very important. It's very, very important for us to, have a blended leadership of both experienced, moderate, and the young people. Because somewhere, somehow, you also need those who have been there. They said in Africa that an elder might sit under a tree, it will look, thousands of miles away, when a young person may just look at the feet, because of experience. I can tell certain pattern. Right now, youngsters might be very excited about the crowd politics in Uganda, but I, Alfred Ochen, I've been around for a while. I already know the results. I've been there. In '96, as a high school kid, I was very excited for Samugari. I was a youth leader. In 2001, Kisambira, I was very excited. I was in university. I thought we would go through. 205, 206, the same. So it's already a clear thing. But if you're really mature, experienced, you know the pre-outcome. So it's good to have a blended, fresh, hot blood with that experience and old thing. So I'm one person who is very passionate about the blended intergenerational leadership and politics in this country. Yeah, but we need to move. We need to move carefully, as opposed to just anyhowly, because leaders and elders, their direction and sense of guidance and mentoring and nurturing is very, very, very important. As opposed to what just going on to the youngsters. So those who misunderstood Raila will be appreciated, more in his absence. Yeah. In fact, I think 207 is not too far. No, 2027, not too far. His absence, if at all there's dispute in elections, who will come and stop this rowdy youth? Raila would speak and his followers would stop. But that is a gap. There's a bad blood between the Luos and Kikuyus who will stop the Luos from going fighting the other side or otherwise. So, the absence of experienced leaders in any setting is not good. Even in our country, we must appreciate a gentleman like Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. We might not appreciate him fully, but somehow, somewhere, as he's aging, he's mellowing, actually. He's mellowing compared to, maybe those around him are being heavy-handed. But him as a person, he has mellowed. He's not the vibrant Kaguta of the 70s or the 80s or the 90s. It's those who are near him who are maybe creating more havoc. And if you meet actually General Museveni in person, as a person, I had a chance to meet him as a student, my career leader. Very engaging, very informed, very humorous. But sometimes, things that happen might even not be of his consent. So you need people who are, mature, experienced, and nationalist, would look beyond their self-interest. Thank you.
Absolutely, yes, indeed. Kharim, the National Unity Platform has become that generational party, the new generation, the new Uganda that you're preaching. So I want to ask, across East Africa, we're seeing young voters. They're no longer content with slogans. They're demanding results, credibility, and vision. Pardon my baby. Could Raila's political journey, with all its triumphs and unfinished business, serve as a cautionary tale for the region's emerging politicians?
I think the passing of Baba Raila should be a lesson to emerging leaders in so many ways. Like I said earlier, there are so many things to admire about him. There are so many lessons to learn. about him. But not only to the emerging leaders, but also to his peers, people who have, mostly those people who have, lived the life that he has lived. They should really draw lessons on what kind of legacy they are going to leave. Start asking themselves, what are they still holding on to? The meaning of upward mobility in political and political transformation. That is something that we really should be thinking about. Upward mobility when it comes to democratic practices. Most of us want to hang in there, and I heard earlier Mr. Simon was talking about 80 years is still young. I'm like, okay, as he remember what our life expectancy as East Africans are like, if you say 80 is young, are you really trying to pass on a message, like a recorded message or something? But we should live in the reality and understand that the importance of passing on the torch, the importance of looking at country first, but most of all, like I said, passing the torch, being able to pass the mic, so that you're not the only person that is speaking, so that you're not the only person who thinks has the vision for the country. I mean, the way most of the times our elders want to give us a lesson of history, but they don't want to tell us the lesson of now. Because when you look at the millennials and Jay-Z's, their reality is totally different from what the generation X and the baby boomer generation lived. They lived a totally different type of life, you know. So if you're giving them lessons of the 1970s and 60s, they really disconnected. They want solutions for today. They don't want to know about what happened then. So if we envision the problems of the past re-emerge, how do we create solutions to redress them, to address them before they even come? So that's why maybe Gen Zs are very resistant to those old history lessons. They want solutions for today, because their problems are for today, and they need solutions for right now. So what we learn from Baba Odinga is continued persistence breaks resistance. If you continue, you can persevere. But I heard the doctor earlier talk about the tolerance and intolerance in Ugandan politics. How can we overcome that? I think the situations are quite different. I would give an example. When FDC moved to my neighborhood in Najana, I was a very young person. I was excited for everything. But I remember after the 2001 elections, the arrest of Besigye flying into South Africa in exile. Then he comes back 2006 with all these cases against him. And, he's been back and forth. There has not been a time where you feel like, okay, when can we reconcile and build together? Because each time the regime's foot has been on his neck. And the last time I think was it 2016, where he was in the Karamoja prison. So you want to get him out of Karamoja prison in Moroto and bring him and put him on the table and say it would look like he's being coerced. Create a situation where if dialogue is to be there, it's freely. But in a situation where somebody feels like, okay, I'm going to be coerced to have dialogue, it doesn't feel free, it doesn't feel welcoming. So our elders should learn that Uganda is going to be here, and the rightful owners of Uganda are not us who are living today, but those who are coming tomorrow. Thank you.
Absolutely. Indeed, we should leave it better for those coming after us, and we all have a role to play. Francis Kamuhanda, Kenyans called him Baba, father of their democratic struggle. His death ends an era, but not the ideals he lived for. For Ugandan opposition and the East Africa reformers, Raila's legacy is both a challenge and an inspiration to persist, to unite, and, when necessary, and quote, when necessary, to shake hands for the greater good. Are we going to see, are we learning from the shaking of hands for the greater good from Baba?
Oh, thank you, Lynn. What other panelists have said, and indeed we are saying we have a lesson to learn. And as we are saying, the shaking of hands. Now, the shaking of hands, we should not interpret it in just a literal way. It has a deeper meaning that in Kenya, they come to shake hands on equal footing. They come to shake hands on principles, not just passing time. But in Uganda, is the ruling party will come to shake hands as a sign of subduing you, not as a sign of tolerating and accepting what you also believe in and what can move the country forward. That's where the line is. And that's what we say. We would all agree that, okay, at some point, can we learn from the likes of Raila Odinga, how he was handling politics, and even the people he was opposed to, the government of Kenya, and then saying, okay, guys, for the sake of our people, for the sake of our country moving forward, let's agree on this. Let's do it like this, and so on and so forth. But for Uganda, it is the reverse. And it's my prayer that if we would learn from that. Lynn, if I can go a little bit, if you look at the reports, for example, from within the system, the IGG reports, do they sit down and reflect and say, okay, where are we going wrong? What do we need to rectify? But now, if you see the alternative reports, for example, I have seen whenever you follow Parliament, like the opposition will bring a report, an alternative report that, hey, this is like this. In our views, this is how this would do it. But have you seen some of these ideas being incorporated to say, because we are that's how the genesis or the beginning of, like, say, oh, we can agree and shake hands. But you have seen even where something that is of national interest that the opposition would want to participate in, but the way how they project it in a way that it's not for the interest of a country, but it is for the interest of a party, or is for the interest of whatever they call themselves. So I think that's where we miss a point. But I would say that one of the things that we need to learn from Raila Odinga to be accommodating, to even reach a time and say, I think here I'm wrong. For the sake of our country, we should move like this. But if you continue fringing on people's rights, subduing them, imprisoning them without trial, and you are like, yeah, that is the way how I'm going to do. I'm going to break them. I'm going to do this. But I like Raila Odinga that he would know when to resist and how far he should go and when to engage. That was something very, very important that I have learned from him. And I think as the opposition in Uganda, we know when to engage and when we can dialogue. But it is the ruling party that doesn't understand that even doesn't see the essence of saying that people can dialogue and agree, and it should be at a national level. But instead, they dwell on disunity and then fragmenting and then dismantling. That is the language they use. So, which to me is not healthy for ourselves. Number one, it is affecting, because I'm also seeing a loophole now when it comes to the East African community. Because I was looking at Raila Odinga and what he was doing as an icon that would also have the real ideal of what the East African community would look like. But then I'm seeing, how do we move that forward as the people who have remained living? And it speaks now volume to what Kharim has said. Like, if you look at the way how we do our politics in Uganda, like what they call the mass party, whatever, the reason why they keep the slogan Tova Khomeini and the rest, because they have failed to nurture the other, or to groom other leaders. And then therefore everything is vested in one person. Like what Oberika, I think, in Things Fall Apart said, that where are the young suckers that will grow when the old banana tree dies? And it is what in Uganda we are heading for. But if you look at most of the opposition political parties, at least you see they groom their intergeneration. They have the young ones, they have the old. Think of when ANT has been moving around the country, like trying to solicit grassroots, mobilizing grassroots and training leaders. NUP, they have the academy where they are training young leaders. How do you need to conduct yourself? How do you need to do this? But look at, instead of the ruling party to learn from that, of course they have their chankwans where they go and indoctrinate and do all sorts of things. They also do drills, and nobody has come to arrest them. But if another person does it, then it becomes an issue. So you see, for them, instead of saying, okay, if we emulate these people, what they are doing, grassroots mobilization, even when they are talking of corruption, I think we can fight this. But instead for them, they come to say, no, I think we should go offensive. We should go this. And I heard Dr. Kisambira say that he has not seen violence in the campaigns so far. Violence is there. How? If you know that President X has like 5 rallies or 3 in a day, and you create a route that will make him meander, and when they are short routes, then that is violence. That is violence in itself. And because they are provoking the agents of the NRM, you know, like the NRM is the UPDF, the NRM is the police, the NRM are the hooligans that they always organize and so on. But because this time we have decided to keep calm and not engage them, to ensure that our message of transformation, our message of prosperity, our agenda is clearly articulated to people who want to listen to us, than failing people like the way how they are doing and so on. And then somebody thinks that there is no violence, but we who are on, our people who are on the ground, and how a real campaign should be done, we know the other form of violence that they are meting on us. But it is important to learn from the likes of Raila Odinga that, look here, being in opposition does not mean we are not part of the country. We are part of building the country, and we are part of providing alternative ideas, generally smart ways on how to do stuff, than the traditional way, and then to keep on repeating the same thing over and over. Recently, I had an argument with one of the people. I was pinning them to the manifesto of the last term that has gone. So I said, no, NRM should be telling us, in this last manifesto, we promised this, and we have done this here, we have done this, and this is what we are going to do. But the only thing is protecting our gains, protecting our gains, protecting our gains. Oh, thank you. I think we need to learn from Raila Odinga. I still believe we have to learn a lot from how he was conducting politics, both at national and international level. Thank you.
Well, indeed, they have a right to protect their gains, Francis, as you and Ant and NUP look forward to giving a difference.
They are protecting their loot, not the gains.
Right. Dr. Kisambira in the chat room says he will be recognized as a man who would hold the bull by its horns to a win-win when it came to negotiations with the Kenyan government. And I want to build on that and ask, as we gear up for 2026 general elections, Dr. Kisambira, the question is not only who leads, but how we lead. Do we build institutions that outlive personalities, or do we remain trapped in cycles of political inheritance and resistance?
Well, thank you so much. Straight away, I think for us, Uganda as a country, we have not tested it if we can build lasting institutions. Rather, we have all these years tried to build an individual whom we have not known whether they will live beyond the institutions or the institutions will live beyond them. But from the tales of how the streets are looking right now, I think the individuals are stronger than the institutions, because even when they are still present, some institutions have failed to perform to their expectations, or some of the institutions' decisions have been overturned to an individual view or point of view. With the recent example being the recent developments in the city center, where the president issued an executive order giving a leeway to an individual to develop the channel that passes within the city center downtown at the expense of the traders in terms of the organization, access to their customers, but also the infrastructure disturbance that's ongoing. Perhaps even the weather, which is destroying their property, vis-a-vis the decision of the authority, which is an institution that was seeing that otherwise in a lens of it not happening, with questions of its implications on the environment, but as well as the city development plan. But later on, an individual wrote a letter and this is the individual that people are calling modern king, all sorts of praises. So we have capitalized on building an individual rather than an institution. And this we shall have to pair it as a nation, whether we like it or not. With or without President Museveni, during this time, I think we have actually started to pay the price of not letting institutions do their actual work in several ways. When you walk through the judiciary, a lot has happened. The same is happening maybe in the trial of the Honorable Dr. Chiza Besigye. His trial is being, I think, sabotaged by an individual perspective rather than letting an institution perform its work, to the extent that an institution like the judiciary cannot come out to issue a statement that cools the public or that quenches the thirst in the public, which is questioning their, how they're applying the law to Dr. Chiza Besigye selectively. And this is so clear that there is someone outside who is influencing this. So when you ask about how we have performed in trying to build institutions and individuals who is going to last more than the other, I think the institutions have even died before the individuals actually live. So we have not done well in that regard.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Kisambira. I want to as we begin to wind up on this conversation, I want to bring in the diaspora perspective, and I will begin with you, Dr. Alfred. Dr. Alfred, we see that, first of all, keeping it in East Africa, East Africans abroad often serve as both investors and influencers. And importantly, political sentiment in the diaspora can shape perceptions at home. I'm curious to know, how is the diaspora community interpreting this moment?
Yeah, thank you very much. As hinted much earlier, the diaspora is very diverse, is a multi-diverse kind of interest group. I said before that the diasporas would like to see change back home, because the diasporas are primary investors. Actually, the diasporas do transmit lots of liquid resources, back to their motherland, and they are very keen to see, progressive elections and governance in Uganda in particular. But from my own perspectives, I've seen other political entities being vibrant and having hope, even doing some fundraising and trying to support their parties and their candidates back home with the hope of bringing in change. They believe that like example, the opposition NUP, they are very optimistic that they can easily dislodge General Museveni through this process, and they are putting their money there, many of them. And then of course when you meet some of us have been there for for some time. We have been in Uganda and we took part, and we have also participated. Yeah, I must say that we have no hope. We are not very we are not very hopeful about what's happening home. It's more of a ritual. Because as you were even as the previous speaker was saying, we have no institutions. We have no credible and impartial institutions even to conduct free and fair elections. Okay, the composition of the electoral commission is wanting indeed, because it's a handpicked committee, commission. It does not show any balance. For example, in Kenya, you find that the electoral commission actually is not appointed by the head of state. Instead, the jobs are advertised and they are selected, interviewed by a panel of people's representatives, and they try to get the best, brains and credible professionals to try and organize and spearhead the elections, as opposed to our motherland Uganda, whereby is a hand-picked thing. So there are no functioning institutions. When it comes to the police, the army, the prisons, these are NRM cadres. All those who are there were recruited and they're cadres of the status quo, and they cannot be impartial. The armed priest, they are the members of the civil and civic and the opposition fraternity. They're untwisted. So we don't have any hope of free and fair elections. Our wishes would be to see that late NUP, Honorable Chagulanyi and His Excellency General Museveni, to have a free and fair competition and let the winner take it. We would love to see that, but it's not possible. Even the current system has kind of messed up the politics of Uganda. The politics is just around money and violence. It's money and violence, whereby people just buy votes. It's not about even knowledge or your credentials or your exposure or your potential. So do you want to even invest your time, energies, and resources in such kind of process? The question mark. I was once there. I stood. I can tell you I had a very ugly experience. The person was declared in my constituency as a member of parliament. He has never spoken in parliament, I would say. So, many people in the diaspora are not very optimistic, though I would say the new arrivals from Uganda who have just come recently, they have hope. Yeah, they are very hopeful. But some have been around for a while. We've seen it. There's no future. Our institutions are compromised. We need to build institutions beyond an individual, because once an individual perishes, what next? We have seen strong men like Gaddafi, etc. Gaddafi, Mobutu, Saddam. When they collapsed, the entire state collapsed. So we don't want to happen in Uganda. So we need to rebrand and rejuvenate our institutions, as opposed to relying on one person. We are human beings in a never know. Thank
All
you.
right. All right. Thank you, Dr. Alfred. Kharim Ntambi, we have, I want to still use the same moment to ask the same question, because now we're tackling the bigger diaspora, the East African diaspora, but importantly, the Ugandan diaspora. How are they interpreting this moment? Do we sense a renewed urgency among Ugandans abroad to engage meaningfully in shaping the 2026 general elections?
Thank you, Lynn. Saying that whether the diaspora could engage meaningfully in shaping the 2026. I would say right from the word go, the diaspora will have been engaged and engaging in politics back home, specifically to say that we can shape the trajectory, we can be part of the story of shaping the trajectory of our country and ensuring that we can have politics that is building a nation and not building empires or building individuals. But as Dr. Kisambira and the rest have said, we are failed by the institutions that either were deliberately uh, collapsed for purposes of ensuring that the current regime continues to manipulate and keep itself in power and build a monarchy on purpose. But again, as Dr. Ochen has said, others who have been long in the game try to get tired and exhausted. But for us, we are committed to keep the fire burning and recruiting the new generation and showing them that this is where our country, where we belong, our motherland, is going astray, and this could be our contribution and participation. And that's why you see, for time immemorial, we have been pushing, and we have ever debated it here, that we can push for how do we participate as the diaspora? Do we need to vote? But my stand has always been, yes, voting would be okay, but is there the necessary infrastructure? Is there the necessary policy that will ensure that my participation and my rights are protected and respected? So those are some of the questions that we grapple with. But again, at the same time, if you look at the way how politics has turned out in Uganda, and most especially when I specifically talk about, I'm sorry to talk about the NRM, where you find that the NRM, they are not demonstrating superior popularity, but instead they are demonstrating superior access and misuse of public resources, which is manifested in the way how they conduct their election, their rallies, in the way how they conduct themselves, and so on and so forth. So that leaves a lot, Lynn, for us to think twice. Are we building a nation or we are building a monarchy? Are we building our institutions? Are we building our families? Are we building our communities? And that's why I have always said, and Mulongo would not agree with me, that the NRM, if they have an ideology, they have a distorted society mind. And much as they claim they have an ideology, I can say boldly that they have, if they had one, now they are ideologically bankrupt. That's why the nature of politics, the legacy they are going to leave in Uganda is a mess that we have to join hands in cleaning it. I can't say that even ANT or maybe NUP, although I don't speak for you, NUP, that they can clean the mess. But again, it would need a, a joint effort for all of us to see what do we need to clean and what do we need to do. But otherwise, as the diaspora, we are committed because we know how do democracies here operate. What is that element that is lacking back home that we believe we can be part and parcel? Because like you see, like our parliament, even these other leaders, they always go out of the country to go and benchmark. I don't know whether they are doing benchmarking or they are going for a picnic, because there is nothing that you can see that is moving that okay, this was benchmarked from somewhere and this is the way how it is done. And therefore the diaspora will continue, for us will continue engaging, although Chen was saying that we seem like to be exhausted, but we are not going to leave the stage. We shall continue pushing and being part. And that's why, Lynn, I thank you for conversations like this. They do capture our perspective and commitment as the diaspora in as far as our commitment is concerned. Ochen, I would say that no, if you leave a wound to the flies, then they will disinfect it the more. But we will keep putting disinfectants and ensuring that we are part and parcel of building the Uganda that we need. And of course, having institutions, you know, even all these democracies that are 200 years and so on, they started with such kind of monarchies, dictators, and so on, but eventually they were pushing them out. Our work is to ensure that we teach those who are behind us what servant leadership means and what means to be part and parcel of building your country. And believe me, at one time, as how Kharim said that even when the NRM they think at 80 they are still young, but I use the words of Bob Wine, he says that even you can't chase a duck. So time will come, of course, but the only worry is that those who belong to the what they call the mass party, the young ones, their minds have also been soiled. There is nothing that they think of apart from looting and using the loot to subdue their subjects than building institutions, but instead breaking them. But we believe it is an uphill task and will continue. As the diaspora, you know, most of the changes have always emanated from the diaspora. We will not lose hope and will keep pushing. And now, given that at least there are modalities how we can engage with ease, one of them being what Lynn is doing for us now. So many people will listen and pick our ideas and know that, okay, Uganda still has some people who have it at heart and who have ideas that can be of help. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Francis,
right.
it's all make just a statement. Thank you very much. I love your sense of human energy, you know, and hope. I love that. But I can tell you for sure, after January, we shall reconverge and compare notes.
Absolutely. Right. I
look forward.
Invite me for that meeting.
On the wall.
I need to be in that meeting. I need to make the mediator here. Karim, I see you have rejoined. We missed you a bit, but we're asking that, wanted to know, how has the National Unity Platform diaspora community interpreted this moment? And are we seeing any renewed urgency? Are we seeing Ugandans abroad try to engage meaningfully ahead of the 2026 general elections?
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, I think here in the diaspora, the National Unity Platform has fully re-energized. Our chapters are active all across the different continents. We've been engaging with our supporters, having regular meetings, trying to support the efforts on the ground, and inviting some of our leaders to speak on these engagements and give them some hope for 2020, 2026. So we are all geared up and fired up and trying to support our people on ground to see that at least we liberate ourselves by 2026. Yeah.
Um, interesting line. How we liberate ourselves. 2020. We are not in a struggle right now.
What do you mean we are not in a struggle right now?
In a war zone right now that we liberate.
No,
We
no, no,
need.
it doesn't. Let me be very clear.
Right.
I think we have normalized injustices in Uganda. That in a situation where we have Dr. Besigye behind bars for these months, it means it can happen to anybody. So it might not feel like we are liberating ourselves because we are not victims, but we have so many of our brothers and sisters who are still behind bars that we need to stand up for. People like leaders like Kizza Besigye, if we deny a time like this just because there is no tear gas and bullets flying, it doesn't normalize the injustices. It doesn't mean that the situation is now resolved. No, the struggle for the liberation of Uganda still continues. We see the inequalities. We see we need to liberate our education system. The health sector needs a comprehensive overhaul. The justice system itself, like we said, part of the institutions need to be liberated. So those are some of the things that we are looking at. We cannot only look at liberation in terms of guerrilla or in terms of bullets flying, but these are real issues. Even our civil societies, come to think of it, our civil societies need a safe space to engage. So all of us have to be part of this our struggle for liberation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. In fact, just to add on what he stated, the
I want you
absence
to
the
finish this
absence of gun.
Dr. Alfred, let's first finish this round. Hold your thought, then we can do the reactions as we conclude. Dr. Kisambira, I don't want to. I want to pick your mind, especially when you look at the diaspora community. Do you think they learn anything from what has happened in the East African community? But also, as we get into 2026, can we cultivate a position? Can you hear me?
I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon in the first half of the question.
I'm saying that as you look at the Ugandan community, diaspora community, do they learn anything from what's happening back home? And do you think they can sit back and, reshape what our 2026 general elections could look like? And can we cultivate a position that is guided by conviction and not convenience?
Well, thank you so much. I want to say that, back then, the role of the diaspora in revolutions that are happening back home used to be more at a strategic level than at an operational level. But nowadays, because of the effects of globalization and I think technological advancement, that shift has made a big statement that, yes, you may see the likes of Kharim and Francis away from home, but just the mere statements that they put on ground or on their social media handles or in any way actually mean a lot in what is happening back home. When you reflect on the previous general election in Uganda, I think a lot of the national unity platform engagement was contributed to by the diaspora, whether formal or informal. And I think the informal bit of it made a lot of contribution. When you look at the likes of this guy who is in Turkey, who was being hunted down one time and went missing for some time, Lumbuye and the likes, I think, shaped a lot the national unity platforms way in trying to find ground back home. So the role of diaspora cannot be despised at any stage in the political processes or revolutionary processes that are taking place back home. But all I can say is that the current changes and transitions do not replace the traditional ways that the diaspora people used to contribute in terms of revolutions, even when communication and transport and all that was still hard. But we can, they can still leverage in merging those efforts of what people used to do before, when they used to just send letters back home to make statements, to now when they can actually hold live meetings and make serious, timely contributions, both in terms of resources and ideas in shaping that Kharim called a struggle or a revolution that is happening back home. So I think they still have a very, very big role to play. And one of the lessons they can take from what is happening in the East African community right now, especially at the time when the opposition in East Africa has lost its beacon of hope, that is the Baba, Honorable Raila Odinga. I think, yes, whereas it has happened in Kenya, it may not be the case for us in Uganda. And I want to say that if it is a fruit, it's a ripe fruit. It's high time that we engaged in coalitions and collaborations or power sharing discussions post-election to make sure at least everyone's interests are advanced to the national plate for sharing the national cake equally. It's a ripe fruit that we should have reaped from. But I think for Uganda, it's quite tricky that the fruit is far from rich to us, that we have to employ a lot of tactics to get to that fruit if we are to actually benefit from it. And if not, on the other hand, the likes of Francis might see that fruit as one that is poisoned, on the other hand, because once you eat it, you may keep hanging on there on the tree. Ask Mao, he will tell you the story. Once you go to try to rip it from the fruit that is hanging up there for us, you may hang on the tree forever to wait for the next season actually to see another fruit again, and you may never come back to push the interests of the people who actually sent you there. So that's my feeling, but the diaspora should actually try to help us push for those ladders where we can have the contribution of the likes of Raila in the play of politics in their homes. Maybe if I can give some remarks or rejoinders to some of the statements that were raised in the previous discussions.
And your concluding remarks as well.
Of course, I think it was Francis who said the collapse of institutions is deliberate. I would have a different view on that it is not deliberate. It's just inevitably consequential of the type or style of governance that we chose as the people in power. What they chose to give us on plate as the type of governance is what is actually breeding all this that we are saying today. And also that makes me join to what Dr. Alfred said. When you see the Gen Zs mercilessly representing those that you call experienced politicians, it's also an inevitable change. That's why it's a lot of interconnected things. When Kharim said, when you leave the wound to the flies, they would actually contaminate it the more. But I want to say flies come from maggots. But surgeons then used to employ maggots in some dirty wounds to actually eat it and debride it of the dirty things and unknowingly paving way for the good tissues to, help the wound heal. So that could be the thing that is happening in the opposition, that they're trying to weed out the debris unknowingly or knowingly, but they are trying to pave way for the good tissues to actually heal the wound. I think those are some of the comments I had to say on the previous discussions. Thank you so much for your deliberations.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Kisambira. Sometimes I need to get used to the fact that you're a doctor. And some of these things are normal to you. Right. Dr. Alfred, you had comments, but also could we take your concluding remark?
Thank you so much for exciting, exchanges. I must say that just in brief, I want to reassure my colleagues that the absence of the gunshot, or doesn't imply that there's peace. There might be no guns, sounds around Kampala and Nakawa, but people are burning inside. So Uganda, we need a complete overhaul from the social, economic, and from the political fronts, positively, so that we can move forward. Because we are very corrupt as a country, so we need to work on that. Then finally, just to wrap up, I want to say that yeah, my tribute still goes to my fellow East Africans from Kenya. I've been following their mourning right now. Then Kisumu, still mourning, and I think in the next few hours, the body of the remains of Raila will be leaving for Bondo, his final resting place, where we'll spend a night. And yeah, we just have to learn a lot from his legacy. As he stated, that sometimes you need to be strong-headed, in the sense that if you know you are standing for the truth, then go for it. Others might point fingers at you. It can be 10 people can say 1 + 1 is 40, but if you know it's not 40, then say it's wrong. So, and time is the best judge. History will absolve Raila Amolo Odinga in many ways. So may his soul rest in peace. He'll be remembered as a nationalist, a pan-Africanist, a reformer, a Democrat, and a father of the modern democracy in Kenya. May his soul rest in peace. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Alfred. Karim, conclusively.
Okay. Well, I would hit on a few things. I think somehow there is a way we are trivializing our liberation as with the elites. We don't. I don't know what the imagination of a struggle looks like to some of us, but to people in Karamoja whose kids have been abducted, and to a tune of over maybe 1,000 young people are still relinquishing in those areas. Those people need to be liberated. So the kids who are crossing Lake Bunyonyi on canoes in the morning for school, those ones need to be liberated, to the mothers who are giving birth on the verandas of our depleted hospitals. Yeah, they also need to be liberated. So I think there is need for us to broaden besides the political jargon, but to look at service delivery that needs to be liberated. Our infrastructure, I mean, you look at a place like Kampala, every time it rains, it's a flood, and there is a way we have normalized that. People say, oh, if it floods in Kampala, it floods anywhere else, but we don't look at what causes the flood that has never been there before, but it increases. So I say that to say that come 2026, I am urging all of us as Ugandans to support the forces of change in whichever way we can, and those of you who can really go to the polls and vote, please make that statement for the people who will be in Uganda tomorrow. So finally, I once again also want to send my condolences to the East African community. And for those of us here in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, there will be a memorial service for Baba Odinga today at the Kenyan Embassy at around 3 p.m. today. So if you are in the area, please come, and we stand in spirit and in strength together with our Kenyan brothers and sisters. Thank you so much.
Right, all right, all right. Thank you, Karim. Francis Kamuhanda, conclusively.
Oh, thank you, Lynn, and the other fellow panelists and those who are listening and following us online. Yeah, I would say again that indeed Uganda, we are not there. We are in a sort of state that needs our active participation and liberation, in the words of Kharim, because again, for the deliberate actions, although Dr. Kisambira doesn't agree with me that the failure of institution is deliberate. It is deliberate, and so also we have also to make deliberate efforts to have it back to normal, because the political flies are very dangerous. They are not like the medical flies that you would use to or like useful bacteria that you would use to bring something that is good. They are very dangerous, and that's why we need as much as possible to 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 ensure they are chased away. Either we use doom or we use all other means or we dress the wound. But otherwise, we are risking bleeding to death. Having said that, I say that, and I still urge our diaspora that we should not lose hope. Our efforts are yielding and we are making significant progress. And at one time, we'll come to appreciate that our contribution has done something. And finally, I would like to say that there is a lot that would emulate from Raila Odinga in as far as the struggle for the common man is concerned. Like as I said, I see him as a social democrat who has a correct, who had a correct society mind in as far as the common person is concerned, and therefore would miss him, will always remember him, but most important as both those who are in power and some of us who are in alternative ways of finding alternative governments, there is a lot that we can learn from him, and that I think would carry his legacy forward. But most importantly, to mentor those who are either younger than us or those who should come before us, so that we all build an East Africa, we all build a Uganda, we all build an Africa that people will be proud of and participate in building and guard it jealously. Thank you.
Yes, indeed, guarded jealously. Thank you, Francis. Dr. Kisambira.
Well, thank you so much, dear panelists and the moderator. I think it's been a nice one, very nice today, actually, attention catching. A lot of issues spoken about that are very meaningful, and we hope they contribute to what we're all yearning for. We continue to condole with Kenyans for their loss, and I want to say that one word of encouragement, that all of us, we need to keep doing some small good for the nation or for the world or for the region, whatever it is. But when those small goods shall be put together, we shall have contributed one big good, and that's what we are all yearning for, regardless of the ideologies that we have in different aspects of life. Thank you.
I was saying that Raila Odinga's life was a story of persistence, purpose, and paradox. A man Kenya seemed content to celebrate, but determined to frustrate. He never became president, yet few have defined Kenya's democracy more. For East Africa, his passing is not just the loss of a political figure, it's a mirror moment, forcing us to ask who carries the torch of reform, who speaks truth to power, not for self but for country. And in Uganda, can we cultivate opposition guided by conviction, not convenience? Thank you very much indeed, and we wish each one of you a wonderful weekend. But importantly, we commiserate with the family and the whole East African region for the loss of a giant, a political enigma, the man everyone calls Baba. We'll catch you again next time.